Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hey. Good boy, Tucker.
Work smarter where you want.
This is learning at its most fun.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Takeover Tuesday event. The second Tuesday of the month, an industry expert takes over our Zoom platform so that we can discuss strategy. It's the best Tuesday of the month, and we're glad you're here. I do just want to mention that this session is not going to take place in Redtail. If you are looking for Redtail CRM training, you're in the wrong class, but no worries. I suggest you stay. There's a ton of great stuff we'll cover today, and there's a ton of resources online that you can find for Redtail CRM stuff. But today we have Deborah Fax, longtime friend and partner of Redtail. Deborah is the founder of AdvisorTouch and has been a practicing financial advisor since 1984 and is known nationally for her unique approach to holistic wealth management. And I can attest to this. I work with offices every day in one-on-one training sessions, and many of them love Deborah. They use Deborah. And if there's one person that advisors that I work with wish they could get into someone's head, it's Deborah's head, because she is just amazing at processes. She's been consulting with advisors for more than 20 years to help them unite and systemize technology, human capital, practice management, and systems. And we have a great storytelling presentation prepared today. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Deborah. She'll explain more of what today will entail and then jump right into the show. So thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Nora. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. All right, we'll get right into the content. Storytelling is a really fun topic to go through, to address, and to figure out how you want to incorporate it into your business. This is a practice management session. That storytelling would fall under the practice management category. You can see the other three categories of having an integrated practice where everything's working together well. And so I wanted to point that out because practice management is just as important as figuring out technology or who's working for the firm or getting workflows in place. Really understanding how you're going to wanting to deliver service and how to do it not efficiently, but also where you are providing great value. So today we are focusing on storytelling, and we're going to look at how you can leverage the scientific effect that it has on your brain and your business, and how to use them, how to utilize them, stories and analogies to educate and engage prospects and clients, using storytelling as a powerful and effective way to communicate with clients, and what type of information you should utilize during a meeting and what should you not use and why. And then ideas for how you can use this approach in your business on a day-to-day basis to differentiate yourself, and some examples of which type of stories you should use based on who you are communicating with. Again, I am a consultant, but I have had my own advisory firm for many, many years. And so this presentation is really made up of the information that our team figured out and how we use storytelling on a daily basis. So let me begin with this story. I thought that would be appropriate. I went to University of California, Santa Barbara for college. And of course, when you go to college, you at some point have to declare a major. And I had no idea what I really wanted to do after high school. I knew I was strong in certain subjects, but I really didn't even know what major to declare. And I ended up declaring aquatic biology. And the reason that I ended up with aquatic biology is because I wanted to find something that I could be passionate about. And fish farming was just getting started back then. Now it's all over the place, of course, but it intrigued me. And I was always really good in science. So I thought, well, this would be incredible. I could major in fish farming and change the world. I could help end world hunger. And I had, I needed to have this purpose. And that is a really important aspect of choosing a career. And so I got my degree and had no idea what type of work I would actually do, the day-to-day work. And I did end up getting a job at a fish farm that was raising striped bass in the California desert. And this is a striped bass that you're looking at now. Now, my job was to take care of the fingerlings, the very young fish and the young adults, and keep them strong and make sure they're well fed and doing well before they get shipped out to the ponds. And so that work was just kind of heavy duty work. I would get wet a lot because, when you throw food into a pond or a pool of fish, what they do, they just all come in at one time and splash all over the place. And so every time I would get wet. And one time I just had it. I looked up, the fish were swarming. I was getting very wet. I look up at the sky and I said, what am I doing? I'm a people person. And here I am, I'm just working with these fish. And that was the moment that I realized that just because you're passionate about a subject area or a type of business doesn't mean that the day-to-day work is correct for you, or is right for you. And so that is when I made a decision that I had to find another job. And a friend of my husband's at the time said, you should try to do financial planning. And I said, I don't really know what that is. And he said, you would be really great at that because you like working with people and you are good with numbers and all that. So I make a long story short, I looked into what that was and obviously went into the field. And so I completely pivoted. And the reason that financial advising ended up being so great for me is because I found this. And when you have this, one side is doing something that you're naturally good at, and the other side is doing something that you love. And when you marry the two, what you're good at and what you love, there are very few days that you work, because work is really just like play. And so that is how I ended up where I am today. So that's a story. Think about what you learned about me by telling the story. You learned where I attended college and a professor that changed my life by encouraging me to look at in a different direction, what my declared major was and how I chose it, the journey of decision making that I took, and my secret to career satisfaction and success, which I gave you a visual for, and why I've always been passionate about career, both as a financial advisor and an industry consultant. So stories work. And why is that? Well, storytelling is a mnemonic. And what is that? A mnemonic is a memory aid, and it helps someone remember either an idea or a concept or phrase or even patterns of letters and numbers and more. It helps retain information. So using good stories that your prospects and clients will remember can greatly assist them with both understanding and retaining the information that you are providing to them. And it also is great for managing client behavior. You can tell a story about how you either don't want a client to act or how you do want a client to act. And the storytelling will help make it remembered. So there is a real science behind storytelling. So I want to go through a little bit of this because it is fascinating. And of course, that science background of mine, I guess it's something that I'm very interested in. But when you tell a story, the person that's listening to you will get a signal that it hits the reward center, the same reward center of the brain that is hit when we eat or when we shop or gamble, as an example. And so the brain chemistry actually changes when we hear a story. And it does that so that we can actually focus on it and take it in. And the other important thing is our brains will release oxytocin. which is the good hormone because it gives us really good feelings of empathy and camaraderie and connection when we're happy. So think about that. We can use stories to help release that oxytocin to make our clients and prospects feel even better than they are now at the time when they're talking to us, and really help them make connection with us as either a prospect or a client. And so it really helps, storytelling helps us get on the same wavelength with others. Interestingly, our brains will release cortisol when we're stressed, and it happens even when we're watching a thriller movie or when we argue with our spouse. But the oxytocin, on the other hand, as I mentioned, gives you those good feelings. And so storytelling tease up this phenomenon that's called neurocoupling, which I'll hit in just a second here. But though I want you to know that the stories that they hit the same reward centers of the brain food, like shopping or gambling. And so stories can have a positive effect or a negative effect. But what's this neurocoupling? So this is patterns of neural activity that of the storyteller and the listener that actually synchronize in the same part of the brain. And so coupling, it occurs when the storyteller and the listener's brains are on the same wavelength. And so there's a real connection that is made. So can you imagine how it could speed up when you're speaking to a new prospect? You're having it could be a virtual meeting like this or in-person meeting. But if you can get that coupling effect to occur, you really engage that person that you don't know too well yet, but they feel that affinity towards you. So what makes a good story? Let's look at the 5 C's. First, there's circumstance. So you provide some background to provide context and to pique the prospect's or client's curiosity. There's characters. So of course you have to include people in your story to add that human element and make it more relatable. Curiosity is engaging your audience's curiosity so that they keep wanting more, to hear more. They want to find out what happens next, and it also, curiosity helps them keep their attention. Conversations. Humans respond really well to conversations. And so if you use a more conversational approach and then also match the tone to the story you're telling and its intent, it can be very effective in creating, again, that connection and teaching a prospect or client something that you want them to remember. Conflict is good sometimes too, believe it or not. It creates drama and tension and doubt. And the main character must face some form of conflict that requires a critical decision to be made. As an example, you could tell a story about someone that did something foolish with their investments and the conflict that occurred because of that. So it still can be a positive, using a conflict can still be a positive for teaching and communicating effective stories. Oh, one more thing on this. The image I chose here is Disney's storybook collection. Now look at all of the characters on the cover of this book. Every one of them has a story that's told, right? These are stories of storytelling. All of these fictional characters had a lesson that was taught. Every one of us could probably give a summary of the beginning, the middle, and the ending of the story and what was learned from them. That's why I've studied Disney for many years to understand how they just keep having hit after hit after hit in all different media. And this is their secret sauce. And so you'll want to tell your firm's story often. Each firm has its own story. And one really effective way to communicate something about your firm is by sharing the story of your journey. Where did you start from? And where are you now? And who was involved? And how did things change over time? Paul Zak, who is a neuroscience expert, who I find fascinating to follow, he says these are stories that, repeated over and over, stay core to the organization's DNA. They provide guidance for daily decision making, as well as the motivation that comes with the conviction that the organization's work must go on and need everyone's full engagement to make a difference in people's lives. And when you want to motivate, persuade, or be remembered, start with the story of the human struggle and eventual triumph. Last sentence is the most important. It will capture people's hearts, first by attracting their brains. So it's a combination of what we need to do to make this happen. So when do you use storytelling? With prospects, with clients, with your team, and within marketing materials. All four of those can benefit greatly from leveraging storytelling. And you see the different ways you can use it to teach, to change course, to help someone change course, to inspire, to reward, to celebrate. There are many different approaches to storytelling that you can leverage depending on the situation and who you're trying to impact. And the best stories really are either entertaining or educational or organized or memorable and universal where they're relatable to all readers. So the best stories have all of these components. And there are 5 elements of a story. There's character or characters, plot, setting, theme, conflict. Again, conflict from what I explained a few slides back. It could be a positive conflict or a negative conflict. This is an important slide because as you are developing materials, use these 5 elements so that you have a structure of how to make your storytelling as effective as possible. So here's some examples of different types of stories you can have. How about clients who have similar situations as other prospects or clients of yours who received a positive outcome from your services? So this is especially effective with prospects where you're trying to explain your services, and now you want to tell a story so that they can really visualize and feel what the potential effects for them would be. So when you have a new prospect, try to find one of your existing clients that has similar characteristics and use them as an example, obviously anonymously. Stories about going through previous bear markets. That's a really important one. Probably right now, this is a perfect one to go through and to show that for people that back in 2007 and 8, if they would have bought on the dip, they would have made a lot of money. Minimizing losses, dialing down when you can't afford a large loss as the bull market cycle ends. You can explain with stories and pictures that a 50% loss takes 100% gain to get back to even. So you can show a visual as you're telling the story. Portfolio for a younger investor. How you talk about one of your clients that is a younger investor versus a more mature client, where the portfolio allocation is going to be different and why. The melt up, how to take advantage of the end of the bull market cycle. That's where we are right now in the melt up. We don't know when it's going to end, but it is the melt up. And then we'll have the meltdown, right? What to do when the market changes, goes the other way. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Pixar. Pixar is known for using storytelling, and it's just an amazing company, a very creative company. And a story artist at Pixar said, every Pixar film contains a deep storytelling structure that includes 6 sequential sentences. And here's their repeatable sequence. Every Pixar film, do you understand that? So once there was and then every day, until one day, because of that, until finally, ever since then. That's their formula. It's fascinating, right? Because all their movies are different, but they start all with that. They all follow that format. And so a great example of their storytelling format was from the movie Finding Nemo, which I just loved. And now you know why I just realized why I chose this, right? It's got a fish. It goes back to my aquatic biology, marine biology story that I told you. I didn't even realize that until just now. So look at the storytelling format here. Once there was a father fish named Marlin and a son fish named Nemo. Every day, Marlin tells Nemo not to swim too far out into the ocean. One day, Nemo swims too far out into the ocean, and because of that, he gets captured by a human. Because of that, Marlin follows him out into the ocean until finally Marlin finds Nemo. There's the format right there. So when you start to tell someone a story, start with this sentence. Today, I'm going to tell you a story. And the reason is that it will get the person or people you're talking to set up to listen. Our brains are just wired to embrace stories. We love stories because we're hardwired to process and store information in the form of stories. That is how our brain actually organizes this data that's coming in. So stories truly are irresistible to the human mind because they activate our imaginations, and that makes an automatic choice to follow the mental movies created in our heads. And so as a result, the stories are used by many TED Talk presenters who are some of the most inspirational speakers in the world. That's what TED Talks are all about, right? Stories. And there is a way to structure a story. And according to the TED Talk storytelling experts, a good story should have these 5 attributes: a way to make people care about your story, taking them on a journey or overcoming some conflict, having some inner motivation, some objective they are trying to reach, but it is difficult. It's not easy to attain. Your characters should also be likable, and the stories need to be enjoyable to hear, have some sort of spark or twist or new perspective that is interesting and makes for a good takeaway. And what can work for developing a story? Well, you can tell a personal story, and overcoming adversity is always a popular topic, if that's appropriate. Creating suspense for what will happen next. For example, you can create suspense by telling a predictable story and then surprise your clients with an unexpected ending. You also want to bring characters who are part of the story to life by making them 3-dimensional, and then use a story to transport your prospects or clients to a scene so that they can truly envision it in their mind. So those are the tips for developing a story. And the positive effects are many, but stories truly can provide us with a breath of fresh air. If a story is well told, it's really something that can stick in our mind for years to come, literally, and I'm sure you all can think of examples of that. And stories can be used to help solidify abstract concepts and simplify complex messages. And I'm sure that many of you have used them in that regard already. Warren Buffett, interestingly, writes his annual shareholders letter as if he was writing it for his sisters because they're not financially adept. And so he does this so he doesn't use too much jargon that he would typically use, and his readers can therefore comprehend his thoughts. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, your storytelling does need a landing point. So how do you handle the conclusion? Well, first of all, you want to identify a landing point in your conclusion, and you want it to leave your prospect or client feeling really good about the education and recommendations you have provided. Secondly, then tell them how your ideas have a good chance of positively affecting their lives when implemented, and examples of how. So as an example, if you're talking about investment allocation for one of your clients that is about to retire or is just retired, and you're recommending that their portfolio gets dialed down a bit and shifted more towards income generating, you could tell a story as to why that's important. And by just telling a short story, it will engage the left and right parts of the brain, where for many clients, once we start as advisors start talking about financial recommendations, a lot of people just start shutting down. So tell it in a story to keep their attention. And then, of course, create an action plan to help them get the desired outcome on how to implement. Stories can solidify abstract concepts and simplify complex messages. That's what I just said on the other slide, and I want to give you an example of that. Apple is an incredible example of incredible example of leveraging stories. So think about computers and smartphones. They are complicated topics to describe and to teach to Apple's typical prospect where they won't get frustrated or overwhelmed. So they had to overcome that. So what they do, they're using real life stories. They've been able to describe exactly how their products benefit users instead of relying on technical terminology that their customers just are not going to understand. So they have figured out that storytelling will help anybody, even someone that is a technophobe. They'll be able to start using their iPhone or computer because Apple is using this approach. So each of you right now, pick up your phone and look at your phone apps on the screen. And if you have an iPhone, like I do, you'll be able to recognize exactly what I'm saying here. So if we talk about the iPhone, most people do not understand at all how the iPhone technology works, but they do understand that someone at Apple programmed that phone so that all the apps that we see on the screen are organized with equal spacing from both the iPhone's edges and from one another. We take that for granted every day. We open our phone and we see all of our apps and they're all beautifully arranged and we can move them around. But do you know how complicated that technology is to program? Super hard to do. And yet we can just open up our phone and start using it with little to no instruction. By the way, I put the fun fact, my son is a senior engineer at Apple, and he was the one that was on the team that designed the floating app so that they would not go into the borders. All right, so the storytelling components, 5 of them here. This is what you need to know before you write a story. Number 1, know your audience. Who's your target market? How will you get them to respond and to take action? You want to define your core message. Are you trying to describe your services or increase sales or educate the reader, which could be a prospect or a client, build goodwill or something else? So you definitely want to define what it is that you're trying to accomplish and decide what type of story that you're going to tell. Will it be educational, like facts and figures, or is it going to be humorous, real life, fictional, awe-inspiring, a mystery, ignite someone to take action, convey values, encourage collaborations? Those are all the different ones I could think of. And is it going to be about you or someone else, or maybe just conceptual? Maybe there's no people involved, but it is good to use people as examples in our business for sure. So the different ways to tell your story: in writing, through articles, blog posts, and books; spoken on a stage to an audience, or in person or virtual, like we are meeting now. It could be an audio story, so podcasts or live conference call can be very effective. And then a digital story with video or animation and interactive stories, which all prompt action and participation from the audience. That's the ideal situation. So there are many different ways that we can do storytelling. And as financial advisory firms, we should leverage different ways, because some people are visual people and like to read or see something, and other people are more auditory, where they like to hear things. And others are kinesthetic, where they like to feel, they like to play around with something. Those are the harder ones in our business right now when we're all virtual to appeal to. But these are all resources, types of resources that we should be providing to our clients and prospects. And leverage the 4 Ps of storytelling. So you figure out who the people are, the place where the story is going to be from, the plot, and the purpose. The purpose would be, what do we learn at the end? And storytelling for marketing is important too. And believe it or not, the highest quality leads tend to engage more in virtual events. I learned that recently. So we happen to be in the best environment now for getting new leads and engaging those people. So as such, we want to create those opportunities for real-time attendee participation, which is why Zoom stock has done so well over the last months, and maybe an audio story through the podcast or live conference call, which would really tailor to those auditory type of prospects or clients. Digital story also. So leveraging visual aids is really helpful in painting this picture. And there's this phrase that you've all heard of: a picture is worth 1,000 words, or a picture paints 1,000 words. And it's true. It's so true. This you can see is a phrase from the English language adage that indicates that a single image can express a complex idea in the same way that a large amount of descriptive text can. And I'm going to prove that to you to some extent in a moment. The image conveys its meaning or essence more effectively than a verbal description. This is really important to understand. The concepts that you're trying to communicate can more easily be explained to and remembered by your prospects and clients by adding the use of visual aids and storytelling. And they have to be clear and concise to highlight the information or message that you're trying to convey, and just try to convey only one message or one key point per visual aid so that the brain focuses on that. So we use visual aids a lot in our practice to teach clients. So let's look at a couple of examples. So this is an image, of course, that we show, and it's for the topic of diversification. So this is an analogy. The question we ask our client, this is during their investment meeting, how should a garden be planted to look beautiful all year long? Well, I'll just give you the answer because for lack of time, just to save time, a garden has to be planted with plants or shrubs or trees that bloom in different seasons. Otherwise, there are going to be periods of the year where the garden is not beautiful. So to create a beautiful garden all year long, there has to be different types of plants, different categories of plants that bloom in different seasons. And this is the image that we use to teach our clients about how important it is to be diversified when they're investing and why, and that each asset class has its season. And together, when they're when all of these investments are put together, it creates a great portfolio, as the same thing as plants being put together to create a beautiful garden. So that is the analogy there. And then another type of visual aid is to help clients manage their investment behavior. And so here, this is a very simple graph, but it's the cycle of market emotions. And I haven't had any of our clients none of our clients had seen this type of graph about market emotions. They'd seen market performance. But here's one on market emotions, and you can work with your client by showing them to show how most people will react at the various cycles of the market, what their emotions are, and then have a great conversation. Well, what were your emotions when we went through the last downturn? Let's plan for the next one and how you'll do it differently potentially. So that's what that is. And so this webinar, that the topic was a practice management webinar. We have a lot of different tools and information that we'd be happy to talk to you about, share with you. And so you can see we have a whole highlighted there, document template library. It's over 300 documents, many of them visual aids and scripts and how to prepare for, follow up, and from a meet, prepare for, deliver, and follow up from a meeting. Lots and lots of resources. We're happy to have a conversation with you. And you can be part of a one of a kind community. We have a group called the Collaborative, and that is where we have a lot of advisors that want to come together and really share information and resources. And it involves all 4 areas of the integrated practice. So you can learn more at advisortouch.com/collaborative. And now we can take some questions from you and go from there.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for covering that content. We have a lot of people that are saying this is excellent items to cover, and a lot of people are asking if the slide deck is going to be provided, because they said this is just great. And
yes, we will. And that is one of the reasons that the deck was built with a lot of detail, so that when you get the deck, you'll be able to actually have the information and not just the topics that were covered.
Oh, nice. Then everyone's probably cheering, because we had a lot of people saying how fabulous this was and they wanted their hands on that slide deck. We have another great question that came in saying, within a 30-minute presentation, as an example, how many times should a story be used?
Well, that's a really good question. I would use the 3 little bears approach. So, one might be too much, one not enough, and one right in the middle. And what I would do is figure out what type of situations, what climate, what is going on at different meetings that you are delivering, and determine it as a group. In other words, figure out, okay, does this type of meeting just get one, or this other type of meeting? Like if you're doing investment allocation with your investment education allocation, you will definitely want to use more than one visual aid. In fact, visual aids are for investment management, visual aids are one of the best ways to temper your client's behavior, especially during rough times. So it's really a personal decision on your part, but you certainly could use more than one visual aid at various meetings, depending on if storytelling is appropriate for the type of information that you're delivering.
Yeah, and maybe just have some in the packet. Like if this question comes up, then I'll jump to this slide, or I'll have this visual aid available. Because I'm sure, just recently in the news, a lot of clients have been asking, what is shorting, since that's been covered like every day. And explaining that verbally, I'm sure is like, what did they just say? But if you explain it as like an opera ticket or something else that could be turned into a story, your clients might understand what that means a little bit better.
Opera ticket, that sounds really unique.
Yeah, I did see that, where it was like, if you borrow an opera ticket and you sell it and you get a cheaper one from a scalper, you just made money. But if you borrow the ticket and then there's an announced superstar that's going to be there, now the ticket went up to 300, and you can kind of refer to that as more of an explanation.
That's a good one.
Another question came in: what are you doing differently in client meetings by video versus in person to improve engagement?
Great question. So the actual answer to your question is, we're not doing anything differently than we were prior to the pandemic. And the reason is that our team has been virtual for a number of years. The other advisor on our team and my main admin person, both of them for family reasons within the same year, had to move out of state, move out of California for the foreseeable future. And so I had to make a decision if I would allow them to be virtual employees, or whether I would need to let them go and and hire new people. Well, obviously, I decided to give it a shot, and it's worked extremely well. So the good thing is we had already had all of our processes completely documented in Redtail workflows. We built, many of you know, we share those templates through AdvisorTouch, but we had already documented our processes. We're very workflow oriented, and we were already doing virtual meetings with clients because we have a niche, Fox College Funding, which is late stage college planning, basically. And we were getting clients from all over the country because it is a niche. And we started with WebEx. We were paying like $350 a month for WebEx back in the day, so that we would build that relationship with the client. So we had already been using video well before any of this pandemic came. And so this is how we have our team meetings. This is how we work with our clients. Everything is basically on Zoom. And so it's really important to get comfortable and really feel empowered to be able to relate to people in this way. And the storytelling is fantastic for virtual meetings for sure.
That's true. Another great question from Alex. Do you have a video recording of a new client prospect where we can see the storytelling in real time to capture all the angles that cannot easily be explained?
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
I do not have one for that. We'll have to think about that.
Yeah, I think that would be different for each, age group or stage of life too. And that video might look different for everyone. And I think too, now that, you've mentioned all these things, that might be why financial planning softwares do so well, because they allow a client to choose, how much do you want for your travel? How much do you want to donate? How much do you want for gambling? And that kind of tells them the story of their future or what it would look like. And that'll kind of make people, sign on and want to learn more, want to engage in your services.
Absolutely. But that was a great question, and I do definitely want to make sure that our collaborative group discusses that, because that's an important issue to figure out, I think.
Yes, and I think maybe Alex might be like me, where I'm a visual person. Like I need to kind of see it to see what's going on. So maybe that would be a great medium for that. And I know personally, I studied journalism for my undergrad, and it was right at the transition where like newspapers were going away. And it was like, what is the journalism industry going to be without newspapers? And it was kind of like chaos, where it's like, why are we learning journalism when newspapers are going away and things are going online? How are we going to monetize that? And I remember one professor just like put it really simply, where the skill of storytelling will never change, but the medium might always change. Might be changing from the medium of paper news to online news, but the skill of storytelling is still what we're teaching and what you need and what people are needing. So I think that the storytelling is really good.
Yeah, think about the Indians, and that's how they saved all their experiences and stories and passed them on to the next generations. And so it, like you said, it's been around forever.
That's true. Yeah, even scaring your kids a little bit, don't go close to the water. One time a little kid went by the water and a monster came out or something. Helps them learn.
That's just mean.
Yeah. And they never saw that kid ever again. I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
But otherwise, we have a few other questions that came in about the collaborative advisor structure. A lot of people are interested in that. So I don't know if you can speak more on that, but they're definitely wanting to know, is there a cost involved and what it entails?
Oh, sure. The collaborative is meant to be just what it's named, which is a group of people that want to excel, that want to move forward, that want to collaborate with others, where the whole becomes bigger than the sum of the parts. And so AdvisorTouch felt that it was extremely important to have that component, that collaborative component, because we have all these incredible tools for advisors and information. Again, that circle that I showed, we have everything that covers all 4 of those areas. But if people don't do anything with them, you can have all these great things given to you, great ideas, as we talked about earlier, and the actual tools and the templates and all of that. But if there's no one holding your feet to the fire, unless you're super motivated, self-motivated, you're not going to get all of the benefits that you can. You might start with some benefits, but this can be massive change, positive change, when you focus on those 4 areas of a business, of a practice, the integrated practice. When you really idealize all 4 of those areas, it transforms the firm to a different level. We're a 3-person firm, and we deliver services more robustly, more in depth than the majority of financial advisory firms. And we do that by having embraced this approach of that integrated practice, and make sure we documented all our systems and workflows, and that we've really figured out how we were going to deliver our services. We wanted consistency. We wanted to figure out what was the best way to do each thing. And so I can just speak from years of getting the benefits of doing the work to get these things in place. It is transformative. It allows you to scale in whichever way you want, because you have repeatable processes, you have materials that are all developed, the templates, and then all you have to do is customize for each particular situation. So it's systematizing yet customizing, and that's the real secret here. Because I've talked to so many firms that, oh no, we don't want to systematize because every client's different and we want them to feel like they're getting personal service. Absolutely, of course you personalize, but you can systematize 80% of it or more, and that allows you to work efficiently. And so basically, AdvisorTouch is the result of having advisors over the last 20 plus years saying, hey, could you share your workflows with us, or could you share some of these templates? Okay, fine. So we genericized everything, and that's what AdvisorTouch is all about. You can do them yourself. Hopefully, just from the webinar here, you have the way forward. But that's the big thing that we're trying to show today through practice management, is getting things organized and really thinking through how can you make the biggest impact on your clients.
That's true. I know as a trainer, I always emphasize, dedicating that front end work to have that in the moment success. If you don't dedicate that front end work, then you might scramble in the moment, or things might not be as successful or accurate as you want them to be.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.